Okay, so this next video is going to cover the 4 different trade variations of some of the most profitable and powerful delta neutral types of trades that are eligible to you now in these PDF guideline formats. All right, so the unbalanced butterfly, the wide body butterfly, the balanced butterfly with a hedge, and then condors, ratios, and horizontals. All of those 4 approaches are peppered in throughout here, but I think that it's important to spend a few minutes just talking about each one of them, and specifically I put them in this sequence because this unbalanced butterfly, this broken wing butterfly where the legs are different, you might separate the short strikes, you can experiment with all different ways to set this up, is one of the most powerful ways to get started trading butterflies or trading option spreads that really mitigates and defines risk on one side while keeping that T+0 line relatively flat. And if we look at this right here, we're going way out in time with days to expiration. It gives you a lot of safety towards being able to absorb big market moves, okay? And ultimately, what I'm trying to share with you guys is, if we're option traders, if we're primarily selling premium, and that's the meat and potatoes of generating income or growing accounts, well, we want to do that in the safest, most prudent, most effective manner possible. And some months are going to be great, some months are going to be break even, some months are going to be losers. But when the losing months come, my philosophy is let's keep those losing months as small as possible, okay? And this unbalanced butterfly is step 1, and we'll have much more in-depth examples down below here as far as varying market conditions and high vol and low vol and sideways and transitioning out of low vol to high vol. And it will give you it should, and I hope it gives you a very clear picture and a very clear path on how you can incorporate each one of these various PDFs to start placing trades. All right, but right off the bat, the unbalanced butterfly, the quickest and the easiest way to identify that is just to say anytime you are setting up a butterfly spread that has different wing widths. All right, so, and the easiest way to show you that is if I just came right at the money here and I said I sold 2 and I came 30 points lower, I bought 1, and I went 30 points higher and I bought another one. That is a balanced butterfly. By design and by default, these are always going to be delta negative trades at the beginning if they're balanced where the wing widths are the same. You'll notice that you have almost instantaneous risk to the upside with any kind of movement, but they're relatively inexpensive depending on the distance that you plant these wings. You'll see that this trade right here will cost you $394 maximum risk, and it has potential of over $2,000 worth of potential gains. We don't target these peaks right here, but you get into almost immediate drawdown with any kind of move to the upside. And so I don't like that. T+0 line needs to be flat, and so the way you offset that is you bring that upper wing closer and you bring that lower wing farther. So you put yourself in an unbalanced butterfly setup, and that gives you, that's a little bit too much, but we could say, all right, let's just leave that one up there and we just move this one farther out. So again, we've got 2430 to 2460. We've got 30 points of distance on the upper side. 2430 to 2390, we've got 40 points of distance to the downside. So we just widen this out by 1 strike, and what did that do? That gave you a much flatter T+0 line. It reduced your risk to the upside. by more than half, but it added risk to the downside, 3 times as much risk. Now, you can say, well, that's not good, right? Unless you're planning for that risk and that's acceptable based upon your account size. And then you can say, well, maybe I don't want to be right up on top of the market. I can say, well, let me come my upper long right here, and I'll put my shorts right there, and I'll still go 40 points down, and I'll do that. Same kind of approach, similar profile, but now see what it has done is it has even further reduced your upside risk. It has given you, the same, approximately the same amount of risk to the downside, but you have a lot more distance between the area here where you start getting outside of this tent versus when we put the shorts right at the money, you start getting into trouble with any kind of a quick move to the downside. And the whole premise is keeping this T+0 line as flat as possible. Let's get rid of that. Widen that out a little. Keeping that T+0 line as flat as possible while we are letting time decay. Remember, these are long duration trades. We're in these for a long time. We're being patient. We're being disciplined. We're being content and thankful with the gains while keeping the risk as minimal as possible while that T+0 line slowly begins getting elevated until at expiration, right, what starts out flat becomes this profile. And in the process, if we say, all right, if I'm going to risk $1,100, that's my true maximum risk on this trade, and in the process I'd like to make $100, well, you can easily see that if we stay within this range from 2480 to 2380, so almost a 100-point range over the next 34 days, you'll have no trouble hitting that target profit. So again, that unbalanced butterfly approach it's a very, very powerful and yet simple to execute method that can be the legs can be planted as on the T1 PDF. We've got it like this. Where we're just placing these much farther out of the money. We're keeping the upper long at 39, less than 39 delta, the shorts at less than 26, and the lowers at less than 13, and that's what it gives us. Now, this may give us too much immediate downside risk, so then you just start moving these around a little bit. Maybe we move the shorts a little bit farther down. Perfect, right? So you can easily see, you experiment with moving these wings, the shorts and the longs, around to keep this unbalanced profile, because that is what will give you that flat T+0 line. All right, and it's not by accident that I made this the very first PDF core guideline strategy that I want you guys to practice in and start testing, because if you follow these guidelines and just spend some hours and some commitment to practicing and back testing and paper trading this, I think you will find that the subtle nuances in it are extraordinarily powerful. All right, and again, sorry, I had a sneeze almost coming. Again, that is only one of many ways to trade these types of methods, all right? So then if we're going to look at the next one here, if we're going to look at the wide body, all right, well, what's a wide body going to look like? The wide body can either be just the same as this unbalanced approach, but much more, I mean, we could put one here at 2460. We could go 60 points away and put our two here, and then we could go maybe 100 points away and put the other one here. Again, it's a much wider body, so the cost is going to be more, but it still gives you that same T+0 flatness while mitigating your risk. The upside will be less than the downside, And if this is acceptable, well, some traders like to trade the wider body so that they can let the trade roam around, and the benefit to that versus the narrower ones, all right, is when you do this, when you have the wider body butterfly, it's essentially the same as saying, all right, well, what if I wanted to sell 2 here, buy 1 here, and buy 1 here? That's a very narrow, tight butterfly. It's got $103. That's all it's going to cost me. We have to close, or we have to stay within a very tight, narrow range for a very long period of time to capture profits. And the reality is the market doesn't stay in narrow, tight ranges for extended periods of time, but yet, you know, we don't want to ever go in and trade naked. If we put on, you know, 2 of these short options here and said we're just going to trade these to the upside only, well, you have unlimited risk of loss to the downside. It goes to 0, you're going to, you know, have unlimited risk in one direction or the other. And so a way you offset that is by saying, all right, well, I can either buy 2 more super far out of the money to define my risk, all right? So it's not unlimited, albeit it's still a significant amount of risk. Or I can say, well, let me put 1 way down here, and I'll put 1 up here. All right, so again, it gives you the T+0 flatness to start out with, but by widening out this butterfly, you accomplish 2 things. You really maximize your theta. It does have a higher margin impact, but you have a, how's the easiest way to say it? The way the shorts decay when you have the wider wings as protection, these will decay faster, and these are only being used as hedges. All right, so let me know if that's a little unclear. The wide body, I do not ever do those in a balanced, unhedged fashion, and primarily this is the reason why. We'll just say if we went, and actually I'm going to change out of the SPX and I'm going to go into the Russell. That gets rid of the quartiles and it's easier to navigate around here. All right, so let's define this. We'll just change this to 10-point intervals, hit OK. There we go. So if I'm going to come right at the money and say I'm going to sell 2, and I'm going to go 5 here, I'm going to go 5 here. 50 points, 50-point wing width. All right, that balanced butterfly approach is always going to be delta negative, right? And so I don't like that delta negative starting point. And so if we're going to use the wide body butterfly approach, well, the way to show that is with the in the money call hedge, which is the next one right here that we're going to talk about, is balanced butterfly with a hedge. All right, so if I say I want to do 10 here, 20 here, 10 here, this gives me the same risk profile. I have a lot of risks to the upside, but I come in the money, and what do? I say, well, if my delta is minus 38, if I found a delta that was 38 up in here, so if I went this one right here and I bought one, that would flatten my delta almost instantaneously. You see what that does? That gives me that flat T+0 line immediately. But there's benefits to going deep in the money, and that is why here this T3 butterfly core is my way of taking the concepts and the approaches of how I've traded the M3 butterfly that John Locke teaches and made it specific and unique to me. All right, And so what we'll do is we say, all right, if I am going to come under the market 10, 20, 30 points, it does not matter at all. That is not what matters. What matters is you keep the wings balanced. Oops, we have to go 10. I have to go 10. And now you can see if I have a minus 25 delta, all I have to do is come right here and say I want to buy one here, and that flattens my delta. All right. I do not like this approach. This has not been profitable. It is difficult because once you get up here, the way your volatility on those, the way your volatility skews deflate on this upper long makes this sag a lot worse than what the models show. So when we're in low volatility environments such as this, sometimes you have to actually increase the contract size to find a way to come in here and say, well, I need to find a delta of about 80. All right, we'll go in the money puts large. I need to have my starting butterflies. They give me a delta of around negative 80 because that's the deep in the money call hedge that I want. And anything higher than 80 is perfectly fine. The deeper you go, the better it works like synthetic stock, but the more expensive it is, and sometimes the slippage is a little bit greater because of the bid-ask spread, and the open interest and volume might be less. So I always just come right around 80, and we'll just say we'll buy one here, and you'll see right off the bat that gives me a negative 7 to a theta positive value of 68, and that's what that gives you. And you'll see that that T plus 0 line stays relatively flat until you get out above this upper long. And this very simple way to correct that, if you don't like it being too delta negative, is, well, what if we did 16, we did minus 32, what does that do? That makes the delta worse, so you have to lighten up some of the butterflies. And again, it's just an experimentation till you get the contracts right so that you get your delta as close to 0 as possible. You're never going to make it absolutely, delta neutral, because it's going to roam around and float, but you'll see that starting profile, that starting graph, that analyze gives you a lot of safety for a giant move to the upside, and you don't really begin getting into any drawdown or trouble until you're 40, 50, 60, 70 points away on the downside. So again, this is just as powerful as, the unbalanced butterfly, but the margin is a little bit more. There are different nuances with it that you'll see in here. For smaller accounts, we need to do the Russell and the IWM. Again, I'm going to spend a great deal of time in the examples below. We will spend, each video lesson is going to talk about only one PDF, and we're going to go through extensive back testing to show you how they perform and react with the Russell IWM combo, with the Russell combo, low vol, high vol, changing the days to expiration, all kinds of variances and variables. So there will be no misunderstanding or no misinformation or no mystery on how this trade is supposed to react. And then it's going to, the ownership is going to shift to you a little bit to test it, to make it unique to yourself. I am just the navigator to help you on your path and on your journey, and we're doing that in the mentoring sessions. We're doing that via the community and the forums and the emails and the conversations. But ultimately, I can only show you the methods. It's up to you to make them unique to yourself. And we'll get through all of these lessons, but understand that this is just as powerful, but there are additional moving components to it that the unbalanced butterfly does not have, right? I mean, unbalanced butterfly is very simply put as to say, well, I can come in here, I could do this, I could do this, and right off the bat I have an unbalanced butterfly. I have one less element to it. I have the same flat T plus 0 line. I've got very, very little risk on the upside. Still have a good amount of distance before I get into trouble on the downside. And some traders just prefer this over the other balanced butterfly with a deep in the money call hedge. Again, it's personal preference, but my job and the reason why I'm doing all these video lessons for you is to just help show you all the variations, but also the quickest, most direct path to get you consistently profitable. That's my job, and that's what I take very seriously. All of these three work extremely well, but they will all react differently and perform differently. And then lastly, the condors, the ratios, and the horizontals. All of these, the condors, if you think of a butterfly and a condor as the same, if this is a butterfly, this can also, this is a put debit spread and a put credit spread. It just so happens that the short strikes overlap one another, right? If I did this and I said, here's one, here's one, here's one, that's the same exact thing as the balanced butterfly, right? It's just that the short strikes are separated and they're not on the same strike. So, instead of having the 1420, 1400, 1380 butterfly, which again, a butterfly can also be considered a condor because the put debit spread and the put credit spread are the same working parts here to this setup. It's just when the short strikes are the same on the put debit and the put credit spread, we call it a butterfly. And it's just, it's the simpler way to refer to it as. So I'm sure you already know that. It's very basic and simple, but you'd be surprised how many people miss that little key piece right there. And as soon as you say it, it's like that another light bulb moment goes off. So this condor right here is very similar. It's just that the short strikes are separated, right? And if you can just relax your eyes, and if you can just think about, instead of it looking like this, like that butterfly did, right? We still have all the same parameters. We have defined risk. We have, much greater profit potential than what we have risk in the trade. So you can set these up with greater than 1-to-1 risk to reward, 1-to-3, 3-to-1, all kinds of variations on that. But this T plus 0 line is what is so important at the outset. So how do we do that? How do we flatten it out a little? Well, what do? You move one of the wings to flatten it out. And again, all you're doing is you're removing risk on one side and exchanging it for more risk on the other side. We don't trade, I don't trade, and I don't want you to trade the expiration risk profile graph. I want you to trade this T plus 0 line. This is the day-to-day risk and the day-to-day gyrations of the market. So then we can say, all right, if I set this trade up here and I'm perfectly content with having $93 at risk, I will never worry about adjusting this to the upside. This could run away to infinity on the upside, and I don't care. It's an insignificant amount if this is a $10,000 or greater trading account, right? I mean, it's insignificant. Now, the downside, if I start getting down around either one of these short strikes, well, then I'm going to have to do something. I'll have to make an adjustment, and the simple adjustment is move some of the shorts away farther from the market. So the condors and the butterflies both react quite similarly. It's just you have a lot more flexibility, and what you'll clearly be able to see, and again, that's going to be unpacked extensively in here, all right, where we're going to talk about why we set up and why we pick the strikes we do and what are the first and subsequent adjustments that we're going to make. But we could easily say I'm going to put my first debit spread here. All right, that's a put debit spread. You have defined risk, you have defined maximum potential. And I'm going to say actually, let's do this first. I'm going to set up the put credit spread first. All right, and the reason I want to show you this for the Condor setup is I know right off the bat that I'm generating a positive cash flow of $151. If I do nothing and this expires above this short strike, I'm going to make $151. Well, then what we need to do is we say, all right, well, that's almost a 2 standard deviation move away for, 68 days from now, 2 months away. Well, if I want to make that relatively flat and delta neutral, let me come up here and buy a debit spread. It's going to cost me about the same. And then all of a sudden you say, well, that's going to be a little bit more than $151. So I incur a lot of upside risk on this setup. So if we know that this is going to cost us $400 for the put debit spread side, well, I can come down here and I can say, well, let me maybe do 2 or 3, or maybe I can do more, so that what you're attempting to do is say I'm removing as much, if not all, of the risk on this upside. That's 99, and so you'll see this is the process you go through right there. So now we go a little bit wider on this put credit spread, which is again very similar as the butterfly. It's just the put credit spread and the put debit spread that have overlapped. And now what have we created? We've created something that has a lot of profit potential below. We've got essentially zero risk to the upside, and as long as the market does not move extraordinarily fast to the downside when we first put the trade on, so at launch or at inception, first couple of days, if this moves violently to the downside, you'll take a lot of drawdown, right? But if this overlaps with other trades that benefit from that move down, this is why, this is yet again why I say that this is the recommended approach for different account sizes. Less than 25,000, we're going to have a percentage in some of these condors and some of these unbalanced butterflies. We're going to have a percentage in the T3, Kevlars, the M3s. We're going to have a percentage in some of these other more active, aggressive type trades, so that the whole picture, the whole account is never going to be put at risk in any one trade like this. And I have met and I have talked with too many traders that find something like this, because this is a very powerful setup. This works a lot of the time, and they find something, they test it, they feel confident with it, they're ready to go live with it, they have a few winning months, and then all of a sudden one losing trade wipes out 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months worth of profits. And is it the method's fault? No, it's your fault for not managing your risk and for not layering other trades on top of it, not being so specialized in one particular setup only. Okay, so the Condor is something we are absolutely going to talk at greater length about, but it is something that certainly has a place in the trading arsenal, as well as do the ratios and the horizontals. So let me just talk about those real quick, because again, I'm really doing my best to try and keep these 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes is a good time frame. That way I'm not rambling, and yet we're getting good content in, and I'm not feeling like I'm rushed in a 5 or 10 minute video. But the horizontals, again, the time traveler right here has a whole entire section on what I refer to as horizontals, and all that means is you are selling options in one expiration cycle and you are buying options in another expiration cycle. It's still all the same elements are there. You have defined risk, you have T plus 0 line flatness, you have theta positive approach, and in various conditions they are very powerful ways to trade. In addition to the ratios, again, not going to spend a lot of time defining them and setting them up, but if you're going to put on a ratio spread, and let's just say I want to come out of the money here and I want to sell 2 of these, and I want to buy 3 of these. Actually, here, let's do this. I want to sell 2 of these, I want to buy 3 of these, and I want to buy 1 of these. All right, what does that give you? That gives you, actually, what did I do wrong here? Oh yeah, no, we have to do this. We have to go -3. There we go. That gives you a very defined amount of risk on both sides. If we did this, that's what I'm trying to do. So we've got put ratios, we've got back spreads, we've got all the different ways to right here, ratio and back spreads. There's 16 minutes where I talk about and I unpack those, but the ratios are just unbalanced. You have varying wing widths and varying contracts amount based upon what your desired approach is. And so if that desired approach is bullish or bearish, or you're trying to hedge, as we talked about in the video above, that's going to determine how you set up these very unique types of spreads. So if we look right here, if this option is going to transact for $14, or we'll come farther out here, say $10. That's a much easier number. So if I say I sell 3 of them, right? So if I sell 3 of those, I'm going to generate a $3,000 credit into my account. But yet, if I want to finance the sale of those $3,000 worth of options, right? Because that's what I'm doing. It's what I'm trying to do with the ratio spread. Is I'm saying I want to put on a trade where the credit I've received by selling these options for $3,000, I want to finance that credit by going farther out of the money, and say, if I need to come up with, and I need to debit $3,000 worth of options, well, I could come out here and I could say, well, these options trade for $3 each. I can just buy 10 of them, right? And what does that do? That says that these options you've sold for $3,000, you are now protecting them with these options that you paid $3,000 for, all right? But what you're doing is you are creating a situation that says I have no risk on this trade to the upside forever. And if we get a big move correction in the first couple of days, or if we get a big move greater than this at expiration, I mean, that's a 20% move down. I mean, falls in the category of black swan hedges, right? You're going to be extremely profitable on these types of setups. Now, for consistent month in, month out, type of income growth trades, I know several traders who say, all right, well, let me just come right here and I'll just sell this one right here at the money. So what is that going to generate me? That's going to generate me, the same $3,600 into my account. Well, let me just go a little bit farther out here and say I have to buy 2 of them. It gives you kind of the idea. So you will generate a positive cash flow if the market goes up, and you will gain significantly if it moves down very rapidly or quickly. Think earnings, think news, think surprise, think market inflection points. That's when these become a lot more advantageous and a lot more powerful to put on. But as far as being one of the core monthly trades that we're really trying to expose you to, right? It's not one of the monthly trades that we're going to be putting on month in, month out, like the unbalanced butterflies, like the wide body butterfly or condor is, like the butterfly with a hedge. So all of these fit together as puzzle pieces, but I think it's important to know that they're all just variations of one and the same. And each one of these, here we go, each one of these PDF lessons that you have access to now are, I hope, going to greatly show you how different they are, but yet how similar they are as well. Okay, so the variations are there, and they're enough to give you the what's the word I'm looking for? Just to give you the ammunition, if you will, to give you the material or the content to start exploring. But you will you will gravitate towards one or two or three that are going to be your favorites. And for me personally, it's in this sequence. I prefer the unbalanced butterfly first. I like the wider body ones second, and then I like these balanced butterflies with the hedge last. I do play the horizontals, I do trade the ratios and the condors, but in this sequence, these are the trades that I put on month in, month out, across several accounts, across different amounts in the different accounts. All right, and so if you're trading a $3,000 account or a $300,000 account, the benefits are still going to be there. You just have to learn the mechanics and the processes of how they all work. So, guys, I hope that helps, and I may edit and redo this as I get the feedback about it, but just understand that these different variations are all really quite similar, and just ask yourself, if you're taking a directional posture, what's the most effective and safest way to do so versus non-directional theta positive posture, what's the most effective, safest way to do so? And the way you learn that is by just experimenting with all the different variations that we've talked about here today. Okay, so thank you much for your time spent listening. If that sparks any questions, or I hope it answered some questions, don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. Next, we're going to go through all these various different examples, and as I said, I'm going to just start right at the beginning. I may talk a little bit more about the setups if you're trading different account sizes, but we're going to go right in here to the T1 core, and we're just going to unpack this in great detail on the next video lesson below. All right, so thanks for listening, guys. Have a great day.